Recently, the world's longest wooden coaster and North America's longest coaster went under retracking for the 2022 season. I got to experience the Retrack this past week, and I've also experienced the ride before the Retrack. Does the Retrack make this ride better, or was it better before? This is my review of The Beast. First, let's go through some stats. The Beast, located at Kings Island, stands 110 feet tall with a 141-foot drop into a tunnel. It reaches 65 miles per hour over a track length of 7,361 feet. It opened all the way back in 1979. Now, let's dig into the layout. After you board your 6-car train, riders take a long right-hand turn that wraps around the exit ramp into the first lift hill. This lift hill often takes a long time to climb as it has to wait for the second train to reach the next block zone. Finally, the lift hill speeds up and reaches the top. You may notice two different POVs, one showing the original and the revamped one. The original drop was 45 degrees and was relatively bumpy at the bottom of the drop. The new drop is 53 degrees and is as smooth as it can be for a wooden coaster. The most surprising part for me was in the back row, there was a great pop of floater air down this section of the drop. Speaking of which, the back row was incredibly smooth. We rode it back in July of 2021 before the Retrack and it was unbearably rough, and now it feels like a GCI. I highly recommend the back row just to experience that pop of airtime. Overall, the back row is much more intense too, but the front is also good to take in the scenery. After the drop, the ride enters a loud tunnel before banking hard to the left. This turn was also increased in banking due to the Retrack, and it provides much more laterals now. But the main downside to the Retrack, the trims. The trims are always bad on Beast, but it feels much more noticeable now. The ride slows down so much that you're jolted forward before going down another smooth valley. After this valley, the ride pops up and takes a lateral filled turn to the right before going into a small shed. This shed stays straight for about 5 seconds before yet another trim. This was the roughest part of the ride in the back before, and now is glossy smooth. After a right-hand turn, the ride enters another retracked portion with a new whip to the side. The original was a level turn. Now there's a banked whip to the right through the left-hand turn, which was a pleasant surprise. After this extremely large tunnel, the ride enters the roughest part of the ride. This was one of the few sections that wasn't retracked. It is still smooth enough to enjoy, but is definitely the jerkiest part. It slams riders to the left 3 times, all while heading down a steep hill. The last turn provides a ton of laterals before it goes over a forceless airtime hill. This then leads down into the infamous second half. This second half is known for being very rough, but the Retrack did wonders for this part. There is no longer a violent jolt to the side, it isn't headache-inducing, and it feels even more intense. After a tall turn from the left, the ride banks on the left for the whole drop into the valley. At the bottom, the ride enters a double helix tunnel, which slams riders in their seat. This tunnel, while definitely a fun time, is also entertaining because of how loud it is. Riders' screams and the screeching of the train echo off the walls. After the first tunnel, the ride wraps around onto the second level of the tunnel. Finally, the ride takes a smooth and graceful turn into the brake run. The Beast is a very long ride, and was made more forceful through this retracking, and also smoother. The layout is nowhere near the best, but it has some fun moments. Now let's find the strongest and weakest points of the Beast through some categories. Our first category is smoothness. This category grades how enjoyable the ride is with smoothness. Sometimes rides are more enjoyable with a bit of roughness, and Beast is no exception, so that's why it's how enjoyable the ride is and not the overall smoothness. I give Beast an 8 out of 10. There is a rough patch here and there that is a bit much, but with the Retrack, the main rough spot, the second half, was removed. It is now smooth enough but still has a rumble to give it that chaotic and charming feel. The only rough part that takes away from the experience is the previously mentioned downward turns in the first half, but even that isn't horrible. Our next category is airtime. Not a lot of airtime in this layout, but there are 2 moments that stand out to me. The first is of course that drop in the back row. That drop is a great moment of stomach turning. The other is a little pop of floater airtime into the covered shed area in the beginning. These are both decent, but other than that, there is nothing. Beast gets a 4 out of 10. Next up is transitions. This category not only grades how smooth the transitions are, but also the whippiness of them. Beast isn't meant to be a whippy ride, but the transitions are pretty entertaining. My favorite has to be the extended transition into the double helix. The ride banks way too early, so riders are gaining speed on their side. It is a really unique experience and adds to the incredible head chopper of that tunnel. Another good one is the second terminal of the ride, where it has a sharp whip to the side. All transitions on this ride are fun, with either weird banking or some good laterals. The Beast will get a 7 out of 10. Speaking of laterals, that is our next category. The Beast has great laterals, the best being, again, that double helix. The ride enters a very high-speed turn with little banking, and in a very tight valley, causing a jolt to the side of the train. It is very intense and fun, but these laterals are littered everywhere. Another fine example is the downwards left-hand turn before the second lift, and the whip into the covered shed. Laterals are prominent on Beast, getting an 8 out of 10. Our second to last category is positives. While not as prominent as laterals, positives are still a good part of Beast. The first turn after the drop has some strong positives, and so does, yet again, the double helix. The Beast gets a 6 out of 10. And instead of including a category like inversions or pacing, which wouldn't fit this ride at all, I decided to include an atmosphere category. This can include elements that don't fit in the above categories, such as theming, setting. So Beast gets a 9 out of 10. While they could have done more with the theming, there are some unique signs in the station of the ride. Also, the entire ride is hidden in a dense forest of the Little Miami River Valley. This ride gets so far back, and at night you cannot see a single thing. And then the underground tunnels and the wooden tunnels add another layer of head choppers and thrill to the ride. The atmosphere makes Beast an incredible experience. So the total score is 42 out of 60, an above average score for an above average ride. So what are my thoughts on Retrack Beast? I think that the Retrack is a great improvement. My only complaint were the trims hitting too hard, especially the one in the shed and second drop. But the ride has improved forces after the Retrack, as the back row is now enjoyable. The second half no longer has the horrible jolt, and the first drop even has a pop of airtime. The main draw to the Beast is definitely the setting and just the charming factor it has. It's really an incredible experience being so far away from the park in an uncontrollable ride. Definitely get out there and ride the Beast, and if you can, ride it in the back. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Comment what you think of the Beast and have a great rest of your day.